Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and welcome to this week's episode of the Knife Guide. So what are we talking about today? With everything that's been happening, right? The prices of knives has just been going up and up and up and up, right? So that's something that we're all having to deal with in one way or another. If you regularly buy knives, it is what it is, right? I am still doing my best to make sure that you guys are able to find knives at the best, like I always talk about in my reviews, like, is this a good deal versus the competition? I really do my best to make sure that I am, casting light on things that are actually good buys. I'll tell you one thing that I am thoroughly sick of, and I don't want to speak for the entire knife community or, just everybody watching. I don't want to speak for you guys, but I feel like there's going to be a few people who agree with me. I'm sick of titanium frame lock flippers that run on bearings. And knife companies seem to think that we are all just ready to beat down doors for the next plain Jane titanium frame lock flipper running on bearings using M390. Listen, the Shirogorov F95-0 is one of the best examples of this setup in existence. It's also very expensive. This is a great knife. Holy crap, is it boring? I mean, I gotta be real. I do like this knife, but my God, it's like, well, here's the pinnacle of the pinnacle of the pinnacle. Fantastic. Knife companies, manufacturers, designers, right? Hear me. We are tired of this. This dead horse has been thoroughly beaten. I mean, it's basically just a horse hamburger now at this point. We are tired of this. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't want to speak for everybody. I'm tired of this. I'm sure that there's still a place for these knives periodically here or there. There are definitely still people who just want something plain Jane, and that's fine. But for this section, this little corner, because I do want to accurately represent where I'm coming from, this population of people that are like me, who do buy knives either regularly or semi-regularly and are interested in this territory, right, that often ends up being fairly expensive, right, in the knife world. If you're watching this upload right now, you are probably at least partially in this population, right? You at least have your toe in the door. There are other things that we would like to see, right? And now listen, one or more elements can absolutely still be present. I mean, obviously, the reason that we see a lot of this stuff is so that the prices can continue to stay competitive. There are obviously still good things about, like, let's isolate the frame lock. There's still good things about the frame lock, right? It's generally easy to manipulate, right? And it combos well oftentimes with a flipper, right? And the flipper often combos well with bearings, right? There are still good things to be had there, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about some elements of some of the knives in my collection that I just love, that just make me feel, oh, it's special because it has this thing. And these things are not necessarily elements that would take the price and throw them to the moon. In some cases, it will make them more expensive, but, we have so many examples of knives nowadays that are just like, here's another generic titanium frame lock. That'll be an extra $150 on top of the $250 you would expect to pay anyway. And you're like, what? Why? There's literally nothing else here, right? I'm going to help out a little bit. My suggestion here is meant to, hey, let's keep the price kind of, if you're going to do this with the price, if you're going to ask us to pay this much, do something different. Here's a couple of different ideas, right? Just from Metal Complex. All right, a couple of things. Number one, first thing. I know that this is not an expensive thing to do to titanium. I know that it is not, and I want to make sure that you, as the viewing audience, also knows that, so that we don't get companies going, okay, we'll do that, and we'll charge a whole bunch of extra money. Here's something simple that I appreciate, right?
This is the finish on this Model 18 is called Orange Peel, and it is particularly good looking. This is a little thing. It's just a little thing, right? We got lots of different finishes for titanium, but you can see what this does with light. Every time I get this finish on a titanium, you know, any type of knife that's got a titanium scale, it just makes me happy, right? What we usually get is bead blast or tumbled, right? Great. Tumbled looks fine, but there are different ways to finish titanium, right? This helps some knives stand out from the crowd, right? Oftentimes we get special variants, right? Or just like Liang Ma is one of few people doing his production models with this this finish that we used to only see on custom knives. But the cost of doing this has come down. The procedure for doing this has become less labor intensive, less cost intensive, right? That's a little thing. It's just a little thing, right? It goes a long way though. Not something that we should be paying an extra $50 to $100 for, but something that can make people feel better, right? If you're going to design something or release something, right, make people feel a little bit better. Oh, it's got something different, right? It's not just another stonewashed plain frame lock, right? Okay. Next up, I think this is, I actually didn't pull out an example. Here's something that I have been preaching for almost 5 years. For some reason, we just don't get very much of this. I got one of the best examples. I just had to pull out because I, for some reason, didn't lay it out here. Holy God, please start texturing titanium like this. I mean, I understand that this is a preference. Everything that I'm saying here today is a preference. But this almost always goes over well with massive chunks of the population who are interested in these knives. It does not have to be a continuous, you know, butt to nose finish, right? You can do this in just a chunk. You can sort of mill out an area on the knife where you can do this. But this, to me, this texturing, and it doesn't, you know, it's like a lot of companies will just do like horizontal lines or vertical lines, and that's okay. But these continuous patterns are great, and I'll tell you why I like this so much more than just plain titanium, just flat titanium, or even when it's just diagonal milling lines. There are so many different areas for the light to bounce off. You can see as I turn this, the light is reflecting off of these corners and then the other, right? Each one of these diamonds has basically more or less light bouncing off of this edge. And it really gives this awesome three-dimensional look to it. On top of that, it does offer meaningful traction if it is done well. Now, the only downside to it is it can cause a rough surface for the pocket clip to ride on, and in some cases, that can cause, you know, pocket seam fraying. Now, the answer to this is, of course, to mill a flat spot or to leave a smooth spot underneath the clip so that that doesn't happen, and this causes problems for left-handed pocket clip mounting because then you have to leave a bald spot on the other side, right? I'm sure that it can be worked out. Textured titanium to me looks really, really good, especially when it is a continuous pattern and preferably a diamond pattern. I don't know why, that's just what I like. But why don't we see more of that? Why? It cannot be that expensive to do. It really, I mean, I understand it's going to add a little bit of cost, sure, but it is mind-blowing to me how many successful, it's not like I'm just like, hey, try this, roll the dice on it, right? There are so many unbelievably successful models out there that utilize exactly this texturing, right? And I know that people are going to give me a million different, well, actually, Metal Complex, what you're not considering is perhaps you should... No! We have too many examples. We have way too many examples of this being a preferable thing that people just lose their minds over, right? And I'm not saying it's perfect for everybody. Definitely not. I'm saying I don't understand why some of these production companies that are pumping out models that will go out of their way to do crazy detail, right? We have definitely seen, before anybody says, well, it's probably because it's too expensive. Nuh-uh. If we're talking, let's zero in and do $200 to $300. I have seen so many examples of incredibly intricate milling that just looks weird, right? And it's just like, well, if you can do that, mill a pattern that is much more acceptable to a broader audience, right? This is from me, right? I'm not going to say that I'm absolutely correct, and you don't have to tell, I get it, but we have too many examples of this being a good thing for a lot of people, a preferable thing for a lot of people, right? Great. Let's move on. Here's something that we curiously almost never see. Now, part of me can understand, right? This is a flat dark earth PVD, or an FDE PVD. I have come to understand that this is not something that is super duper easy to do all the time, depending on who is doing it, right? I suppose, I remember talking with River's Edge Cutlery, because that's what that blade comes from, right? I'm not saying everybody likes brown, right? People, that's baked bean color. I don't like that color. Okay, not necessarily, right? This wouldn't be my favorite color to wear for shoes, but on knife blade, yeah, absolutely. I think this looks freaking awesome. And I know that a lot of people do too, because every time I get that knife out, people just lose their potatoes over it, right? River's Edge Cutlery, for example, that is their exclusive. Now, they will do Cerakote in almost any color except for that color. Number one, right, because their exclusive Spydercos are in the PVD, right? It's a Cerakote. Cerakote's different than PVD, but I talked with them, and it's Spyderco who does that. And Spyderco apparently does not like to do that. Apparently, this is a complicated thing, and getting it the right consistency and making it look good and getting that color, it's not something that they enjoy doing. Now, I would venture to guess it's different depending on the output volume and the different, the types of equipment they have, how many orders they have, how many, they're going to try to do, right? And they're trying to, Spyderco's a big company, right? So doing certain things like, doing a flat dark earth PVD might be more complicated for them than a smaller company in the United States, in China, wherever, right? We don't see a lot of PVD at all from some of these ultra high-end Chinese production companies. Here's what we see from them. Tumbled, black wash, right? Or machine belt satin. That's pretty much what we see. Everybody, wherever it is that you're making knives, that flat dark earth PVD, people really like that, and we do not see that very much. I would venture to guess that it is not an easy process. I don't know how expensive it is, right? But, for a reference point, I'm pretty sure that River's Edge Cutlery, even though, again, the Spyderco doesn't really like doing this, I'm pretty sure that these RAC Shamans that they've done the PM2 and the Para 3, these FDE PVD knives that they release periodically are made in the United States, and I'm pretty sure come out to, I don't know, anywhere between $180 and $250, right? Expensive, but obviously something that can be done within a reasonable price parameter, right? So I'm taking that one. I'm making my assumptions on face value there, but it's just, why don't we see more of that, right? Here's another one. It should be less complicated. I'm blown away that we don't see this very often. Microtech is doing this bronze finish. I talked to them about this. And again, I don't have a lot of experience in making steel bronze, but apparently the way that they achieve this is just by heating it. The only experience that I have in making steel this color is actually funny. I didn't want to pay for bronze titanium standoffs for one of my hinders a long, long time ago. And I watched a video on how you could literally just heat it up and it would turn bronze, right? Now, I don't recommend this at all. This is not a good idea, and what I was doing was kind of dumb. But I used, this was a long time ago, guys. I used the burner on my stove and just put the standoff on there and let it heat for a little bit, and then I dropped it into a little glass of Windex. And you know what? Sure enough, it turned bronze. Now, this is not a very durable, it's not a coating, right? It's just sort of a finish. It's not very durable. In fact, Microtech told me the more you use the knife, the more likely that finish is to wear off, right? But that's the same thing with anno. Before we get upset about that, that's the exact same thing with anno. Blue, bronze, whatever, right? The more you use the knife, if you've got an anodized pocket clip on a knife you've been using a lot, I can almost guarantee it's starting to wear off, right? It's amazing to me that we do not see more bronze blades. Now, I would have ventured to guess that the issue with this is probably if the blades need to be heat treated first and then they have to apply this finish to it. Perhaps it could alter the heat treat. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not a professional in this. I'm just trying to throw some arguments out there that I would expect to be thrown back at me, right? It perhaps could alter the heat treat. And as we know, heat treat, the heat treat quality is not always optimal when we're talking about mass-produced knives, even if they are expensive, right? It sure would be nice to see more of that. That seems like a more simple one, right? Something that I very much miss, speaking of finishes, something I very much miss about Hinder knives is seeing the black stonewash DLC, right? Or the dark stonewash DLC. We see Battle Black and we see DLC, which people often confuse for this finish. No, this is but a third dark finish. This is my Dark Horse XM24. I'm really happy to have this one. The same finish is applied to the titanium. You can see it's a little bit different. I have seen companies do this finish in $150 to $200 production knives, right? We've got some Chinese OEMs that are doing that finish at a much lower price. It's almost identical. And I've definitely seen, like, Heretic Knives did it on their, what was that thing? The curved OTF. I've actually got it over here. They did it on that, and that's like I don't know how, $400, $500, $600, $700 OTF, right? But I'm pretty sure that this polished DLC is something that is much more doable now than it used to be, right? I don't think that it's necessarily a simple finish, and as I understand, whenever you do a DLC or this, any type of coating, I believe, and maybe it's just DLC, the process, the bonding process or whatever can absolutely lower the heat treat, right? It still would be cool to see something like that because, again, what we always see is stonewashed, blackwashed, and belt satin. Wow, right? Or every now and then we get hand rub satin, which that's fine, right? But there's other stuff. There's other stuff out there that's really cool. And also, this is more of a me thing. It's just a me thing. May not be a you thing, right? I love Zirconium. I love Zirconium. Oh, Complex, that's freaking expensive, right? Look at that. I'm not talking about doing the whole thing. Accents, right? We've seen a little bit here and there. I love the little zirconium Damascus accents. Don't want that much color? Let's do more zirconium accents. Great, this looks beautiful. Just little pieces of zirconium here or there, right? Maybe not necessarily as the pocket clip, but the back spacer or the pivot collar, right? It's that's something that the companies will use to, like, oh, well, we got to charge another $120 or $150 for that. I'm not so sure that it, warrants that type of markup. Maybe a little bit, right? Because those materials are definitely not inexpensive. And in the case of zirconium, it's actually dangerous to machine. If you didn't know, zirconium is not only heavy and can create balance issues, but mainly it throws a lot of sparks, right? I would like to see that. Maybe not necessarily for regular production models, but maybe if there's like an option, like we're going to do a run of this many and we're going to do some special runs. Really like to see more options, right? Really, I feel like I'm mainly talking to some of the, the sort of up in your face, like with the lights everywhere, the production Chinese OEMs that are pumping out a gazillion knives a month, right? Do something different, right? Blue titanium is not like, oh wow, that's not enough anymore, right? We've seen blue, bronze, whatever, some different materials used as sort of a highlight to a certain area, right? Or a contrast to a certain area would be really interesting and would help us feel better about paying these, kind of ridiculous prices. I'm not saying it's going to solve the issue, but it would be nice to see something different, right? Here's another thing. I'm tired of, me personally, I'm not speaking for everybody, I'm tired of exposed titanium frame locks. Inset titanium liner locks are beautiful. They literally solve the issue of manual flippers not being able to be flipped because of awkward hand positioning, right? This frees up designers to kind of make the handle shape whatever they want because people do not have to worry, oh, am I putting my fingers on the lock bar? I don't know, right? And for people saying, well, titanium frame locks are stronger than titanium liner locks. In some situations, maybe, but a titanium frame lock is literally no stronger than its relief cut, which, surprise, is almost exactly the same thickness as this titanium liner lock. So while there is more surface contact, sure, in a situation where you have improper geometry versus improper geometry, I would venture to guess that the more surface contact you have, the better. But in today's day and age, most frame locks and liner locks have the right geometry for solid lockup. So, make the inset liner lock a little bit thicker and then just make it inset. Now, the problem here is that you have to mill one side to accept that liner, and this is extra work, extra machining, right? I would venture to guess that an inset liner lock, right, whether it's titanium or steel, is probably more expensive to do than a generic frame lock, right? But again, we're paying a lot more, and in some situations it feels kind of like, yeah, we're paying more because of inflation, but it also feels like we're paying a little bit more just because, right? Because, oh, well, everything's more expensive now, you know? So that's oftentimes that is what it feels like. Not in every situation, but sometimes. So again, extra mile here, you know, just a little extra, right? Again, frees up the designer. You don't have to worry about, people don't have to worry about where to put their hands, right? Just as easy to manipulate as a titanium frame lock, right? Would be cool. Oh, yeah. For some of these, you know, like if we're going to talk about like premium Chinese OEMs, right? I know a lot of this video I'm talking about like the Chinese production companies that are pumping out 1 million knives all over the place. Part of it, I'm not, this whole video is not specifically about them. I'm talking to everybody. But, you know, if you're going to buy an integral, right? Have you ever looked at what it costs to buy an integral made in the United States? Yeah. The only people in the world who are making, you can't even use the word affordable, right? Because they're still unbelievably expensive. But the only people in the entire world who are making integral, like truly integral titanium knives or integral knives of any sort, right, that are even remotely close to even being considered affordable are the Chinese OEMs, right? Please make more. We got a lot. We've got companies who are just their regular titanium frame locks, their sandwich and pillar construction frame locks are approaching the old price of integral knives. Just because. And I have a hard time believing that. I have a hard time believing that inflation has actually brought us to that point. Ask me what the original cost of the Riot Jack 1 costs. Or don't ask me, I'm going to tell you anyway. You want to know what it was? About $425 to $450 if I am not mistaken. This got you an integral titanium frame lock. And I'm not talking about the Reeve integral lock, which is the lock itself. I'm saying the entire handle of the knife was milled from a single block of titanium and not two pieces sandwiched together with a backspacer or pillar constructed with standoffs, right? This is expensive and more risky to do, period. So it's going to cost more money. It also got us, in that case, an M390 blade and I believe it was marble carbon fiber inlays, right? And I think the frames of the titanium were not only textured just like this 1.5, but they were also, in some situations, I think they flamed them, right? Now, inflation has brought the price of that up, absolutely, right? But some of these regular titanium frame locks, oh, it's made by this company or that company, so it just costs $400, $450. No, more integrals for people who want to spend money in that territory, right? That is an element that makes it a little bit more enticing, right? If I look at a knife that costs, you know, a lot of this, like my recent CKF Evo, Rotten Evo 3.0, great knife, but holy crap, what was it, $650? That's way too high. That thing should have been an integral at that price, right? And then even still, it would have been like, wow, that is a really expensive integral, right? That's the kind of thing that people are going to want to look for. I got a couple more things. We're already at 24 minutes. I know that this is expensive. This is one of those things that's just going to make the knife cost more. This is Dendritic Cobalt. Terravantium is the actual, like that's Terrain 365's name for their like exclusive Dendritic Cobalt. But this stuff has been around for a bit. Research Boyd Dendritic Cobalt. It's been around for a bit, right? Now, it will not necessarily outperform some of the most high-performance steels of our generation. It's not going to outperform, you know, all of it, but it does a great job. Very tough. I don't know about sharpenability, mixed reports there, but it can't corrode, and it has great edge retention. It can't corrode. In the case of this knife, literally no part of the knife can corrode. The hardware, the bearings, the cages for the bearings, nothing. The scales, nothing can corrode. These it's a non-metallic blade material, right? It's a non-steel blade. It's not steel at all. There's no part of it that can corrode. I like the idea of Dendritic Cobalt as a knife blade material. I also like the idea of tungsten carbide, but that stuff gets really expensive, right? I would venture to guess as time goes on, maybe the machining of this material or mass producing it, maybe it doesn't necessarily become inexpensive, but it becomes less expensive, right? As things generally do as time goes on. Stuff like that would be really cool, especially, you know, again, for some of the more expensive stuff. I'm being intentionally vague here. Here's another one. Now, this isn't an end all, you know, be all solution, but I'm kind of, you know, I'm sick of every other knife being 20CV, M390, or 204P. It's often not 204P because that's Carpenter, and I would imagine it's more expensive being made in the USA. Well, maybe not though. I don't know. 20CV is made in the USA. I don't know. That's fine. It's, you know, if it's properly heat treated, it's fine. A steel that the reason I'm showing this guy is because this is S90V. And if there's any steel that I have misjudged on this channel, which there have been many, S90V is definitely one of them. I have thoroughly I don't know, I guess I don't know how to say that. I have thoroughly misjudged S90V. It is a wonderful, wonderful steel with insane edge retention over M390. I don't even know if the stuff I've been using has been properly heat treated, but it has been blowing M390 out of the water, and it is way tougher than I originally thought. My first experience with S90V, I had an ultra chippy blade, and I was like, I hate it, this sucks, right? Boo, and I just judged it immediately. Every single example I've had since then has absolutely outperformed every M390/20CV/204 blade that I have experienced, right? And I regularly carry a lot of this stuff. I think S90V would be an awesome, like, for example, like here recently I noticed that Knife Nuts Podcast did a special edition of the Null Knives Voodoo, which is a wonderful knife. It's one of the best knives of 2022. Standard blade steel in that knife is M390. They did a version of it in S90V with some other cool upgrades, and I was like, oh, this makes me feel way better. If there's a steel that makes me automatically feel better about the high price tag, right, it's S90V. S90V is one of those steels now when I see it, I go, you know what? It just makes me feel way better automatically about that price tag. Custom knives, we see crazy multi-$1,000 custom knives in S90V. We see knives sometimes that come in, you know, I think it's pretty rare to see anything under $200 in S90V. It's one of those blade steels that will definitely bump the price tag a little bit, but I sure would like to see more of it. I really would. It's not quite as stainless as M390. That's one of the only drawbacks. The claim is that it is not as tough as M390. I don't know. In my experience, it seems like it does a pretty good job. I don't really care about having the corrosion resistance of M390, and I know some people will, but S90V just seems better, right? I don't know. You guys are going to have to tell me your opinion on that, but that's something where if I look at the price and I go, golly, that's up there, right? It's got all the other, it's got all the titanium and what I expect in that price range. I don't know. What's the blade steel? Oh, well, okay, S90V. How many, I mean, I can't be alone there, right? That's one of those things that just makes, it's just like somebody, you know, petting you and going, it's okay. Everything's going to be okay.
All right. Honestly, I could keep going. We're at 30 minutes now. I've got maybe like 20 more suggestions. And again, this is all just my opinion. You guys don't have to agree with me. But with the price of everything being higher, I sure would like to see something different, right? Even if it doesn't necessarily, if it's not something that's necessarily more expensive, I would just different things, right? Yeah, okay, that's going to be pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed this extremely ranty episode of The Knife Guy. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.